The Twins have announced their non-roster invites for spring training. Who made the list? Who didn't make the cut? Did Brandon and I? Find out after getting Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Locked On Twins, your daily go-to source for the top Minnesota Twins insight, discourse, and analysis. Personally, it's my favorite show of the Locked On Podcast Network, which, by the way, brings you your team every day. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe where applicable. I'm Dave Brown, an MLB writer for way too long, a BBWA member for over a year, actually for over 10 years, and a Baseball Hall of Fame voter who is currently based in the Midwest. I remind you, there's no smoking in the Metrodome. In fact, there's no Metrodome at all anymore. There's also no smoking anywhere, so you're covered. Across the Great Plains, in cyberspace, we have Brandon Warren, a longtime Twins writer and even longer-time Twins fan, who's been there and done that when it comes to Twins baseball. Today's show examines the list of non-roster invites to Twins camp in 2025. Who made the list? Well, Falvey made the list, but who's on it? Who didn't make the list? Thad Levine didn't make the list because he's not with the Twins anymore. Which notable players didn't get invites but could have? I can think of one. We'll also take a look at a fun social media video that the Twins made, which is about bubblegum and how tall Bailey Ober really is. Before we get into details, you need to know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel customers, new ones, can get $150 in bonus bets if their first $5 bet wins. $150 if their first bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started now, or after the show. Brandon, the list is life. The list is out, and the Twins are inviting some people to spring training. What's your first impression of the list?
Short list, and I wonder it's 16 players, and I almost wonder if that doesn't mean that they're anticipating maybe adding a few more minor league side free agents, whether it's, there's 9 righties, or no, wait, how many right hands? So anyway, 16, I think it's 8 and 8, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, 7 and 9. Anyway, I could see, a couple more maybe relievers, and I could see maybe an outfielder or a shortstop. But again, we're also thinking like a shortstop on the major league side still. So I don't know. Again, though, pretty light. Obviously, maybe more notable who wasn't invited. And I wondered about that when I saw the list. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But fun little note passed on by Dustin Morse. 8 have major league service time of the 16 players invited to camp. Armando Alvarez, Scott Blewett, Randy Dobnak, Mike Ford, Darren McCowan, Anthony Misowitz, I hope I'm saying those last 2 correctly, Alex Spees, and Huascar Inua.
You're actually not pronouncing McCracken. It's McCracken, which, that's a hard Gaelic right
like
there.
Quentin McCracken, except McCracken.
And Anthony Mashevitz. So it's sort of like Doug Minkiewicz, but slightly different.
I feel ashamed. I should probably have picked up on that.
Well, there's actually a fun-ish video of Anthony Mashevich's highlights in 2023. He didn't really have any last year. I think he had 1 appearance with Los Yankees. But, he's I guess we could start with him, if anybody. He's a lefty. He's got some occasionally nasty stuff. Probably walks a few 2 guys and maybe doesn't strike out quite enough. But he's one of those dudes who's been around. He's got the experience. One of those people that Dustin mentioned. He can, he's in this highlight video. He struck out Juan Soto and Manny Machado and a couple other people, and some people that maybe you've not heard of. But he's got pretty good stuff, and it's a guy who, if some of the lefties don't work out, you might see him in the Twins bullpen this season. And of course, they just recently added Daniel Kulam to the pen. So what it's interesting too. You mentioned like who's not on the list. No outfielders, no shortstops. I'm not really necessarily surprised at that, but it's a little not alarming because we already knew that the Twins didn't have any real shortstop depth, major league ready shortstop depth in their minors. But it's kind of, I mean, none of these guys have like shortstop experience. Maybe Lee Keyshaw did in as an amateur, but Armando Alvarez, he's the third baseman, and Alex Isola, corner, and Junior Severino, a corner. Mike Ford's a first baseman. So I don't know how much help those guys are going to be, but the two pitchers that sort of stood out, I think Keith Law maybe had them at the back end of the top 10, and one guy didn't quite make the cut as far as Twins prospect goes. Corey Lewis and Andrew Morris. Lewis, of course, also throws a knuckleball, so that's kind of an interesting play. We'll see. Is Ryan Jeffers ready for that, or is that more of a, another catcher is going to have to handle that knuckleball? So that's good. That's sort of the downside of a knuckleball. You sort of need a guy to catch it, and not just any catcher with any kind of mitt can catch a knuckleball. So we'll see how Corey Lewis does.
Bob Uecker said it was extremely easy to catch a knuckleball.
Yeah, right. Just
wait. One of my favorite lines. You wait for it to stop rolling.
So that's not going to work though. Bob is funny. Bob's funny, but that's not really a good way to do it.
You look at the kids. I mean, it's going to be more get a look at them. Even if you look at the 40-man roster, they still have plenty of young guys that they won't make the team that they're going to probably even get longer looks at. Your Brent Hedricks and that sort of thing. But I don't think there's any harm in bringing guys over, especially a little on the older side prospect-wise. We're not talking 18, 19 like we are with Walker Jenkins, who, again, as we said, wasn't invited. And it's kind of a funny list because Randy Dobnak, he's not going to make the team. Scott Blewett, he's not going to make the team unless things happen. There's really not much in the way of could this guy make the team. It all seems to be mostly guys in supporting roles, or if everything breaks right, this guy can help the team this year. And I'm looking at Keishel, again, more a roadblock in terms of players than actual, how good he can be. Severino, I don't know what the future holds for him. The number said he was a really projected as a really good defensive first baseman, but I don't know if that's I think that's maybe if it's a bug versus a feature on Zips. And beyond that, Inwa, if he's healthy, I could see him kind of filling like a Jesse Chavez kind of swingman, whatever role, but there's really no reason to believe he's healthy until he proves otherwise. So honestly, this is maybe one of the more uninspiring groups that I've seen. I mean, Seattle, for instance, has some pretty fun guys that you haven't heard of for a while. I think Sean Newcomb might be on that list, and a couple other pitchers who at one point had some sizzle. This is kind of an uninspiring list to me.
You mentioned that things could be in flux a little bit just because of what other plans the Twins might have to bring.
Well, I could see him signing someone like Cole Tucker, the shortstop-y type of guy, but even that, again, not that exciting.
Who's going to get added to this list if he clears waivers is probably Ronnie Enriquez. He'll probably come back. So it depends on.
Yeah, if he clears it, no doubt. And I was looking around because I saw Doogie Wolfson say he thought he'd cleared. The Twins non-tendered him after 2023. So taking him off the roster now, I believe, is his first attempted outright. And so if he does clear, he stays in the organization. If I'm reading everything that I saw on his transaction logs properly.
So they don't even have to go get him. He just stays.
I believe so, because they non-tendered him. He signed a minor league deal before last season, spent the year on the roster, and then got taken off the roster here in the last week or so. And so I believe that's the first attempt at outright of him, because I couldn't find one on his transaction list. Obviously not with Texas. They added him and then traded him. But near as I can tell, he has not been outrighted. So he should be good to stay in the org. And the tough thing at this time of year, teams have pretty full 40-man rosters. There's still free agents available. They have their own guys they got to kind of account for. So I think there's a decent chance he clears, even though I think there's a potentially really good pitcher in there.
One more thing about Anthony Misiewicz. He's a guy who outperforms his ERA typically. So his FIP is lower by like 3/4 of a run, basically lower than his ERA. That's over his career. I don't know if that's the product of at one time being a one-out lefty or exactly.
A lot of fly balls too.
Yeah, he has been vulnerable to the home run, although
here's
not
what
lately,
it is.
lately, earlier in his career.
High BABIP, lots of fly balls. So fly balls that have a BABIP, that should normalize reasonably well because home runs don't count in BABIP. So he has an abnormally high batting average on balls in play, 337 for his career, for a guy who has struck out a batter per inning, walked fewer than 3 per nine, not per inning, sorry. And then you said homer issues have kind of come and gone, but his career rate of 117 is like perfectly functional middle reliever numbers. You wouldn't want probably him closing at that number necessarily, but it's not like he's Emilio Pagan.
Right.
Well,
and that's always a plus when you're not, I would say. And Scott Blewett, he whether it was just luck or whatever, he came in at the end of last year, and when other people were not playing well, he gave them some valuable innings down the stretch that they squandered into nothing. Yeah, he was. He was a guy that you're like, Scott Blewett's coming in. Oh, he didn't blow the game. So, he did better than he also outperformed expectations to a certain degree. So,
well, he'd thrown big league innings before, not last year too. So I suppose that expectations had to be pretty low.
Right. With that, we will take our first break. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Walker Jenkins not making this list and what that means, and more about the Twins' non-roster invitees.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip, or you just want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback or anything going on in the game, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. If you've seen people talk about SGPs online, that's what they're talking about. I personally enjoy the in-game juice to, kind of keep your competitive juices flowing, especially if a game gets away from a team or, the gap kind of widens out and you want to bet on some smaller things. I think that's a whole lot of fun. And plus, the app is super easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. You can't do any better than that. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet hits. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com, or check out that FanDuel app. But first, you got to sign up, win your first $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Locked On Twins has returned, and we would like to remind you that me and Brandon and I are available on social media. You can catch Brandon on Blue Sky at Brandon_Warren.
That's backwards.
I thought you were just. Oh, it is. Oh,
you said it backwards.
I did.
Yes,
I did. So he's at Brandon_Warren on Twitter, and he's just at Warren. Some other things on Blue Sky. And when you see me on Blue Sky, it might be the first time. It won't be the first time, but it'll be near. And I'm Answer Dave on Blue Sky and at Answer Dave Brown on Twitter, because Answer Dave died because of a misunderstanding with Twitter, and it's AI overlords. I swear, I didn't mean anything by it, Mike Farron. So, and we're talking about the non-roster invitees to the Twins camp, and who's not there? Walker Jenkins isn't there, and he's only 20 years old. So I asked an expert. I asked Dan Hayes, should we be surprised? It would have been kind of fast for them to invite Walker Jenkins. And he said, I was looking forward maybe to seeing him too, but it would have been really fast for them to have invited Jenkins to spring training. And I think it makes sense on a lot of levels that they didn't do that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we will not see him in spring training games. We most certainly will. I don't know if he'll get any starts or whatever, but we will see Walker Jenkins play spring training games. He'll come over from the minor league camp and interact in that way.
Have we ruled out the possibility that his invitation was lost in the mail?
They do get. So I don't remember who it was, but somebody asked a former player at one time. I don't know if it was Plouffe or somebody. Do you get like actual invitations in the mail? And he said they do. So the players do get, as of a couple years ago, they would get. I don't know if it's like you're cordially invited, kind of a hard stock
calligraphy.
Is it a telegram? I don't know, but they do get something delivered to their house that says you have been invited to spring training.
What did they say on old shows when they were doing telegrams and they would have to say like the spaces, pause? I can't remember what it was. Like Bugs
Stop.
Bunny.
It was stop.
Yeah, stop.
Yeah, that was period.
Dear Trevor Plouffe, stop. You've been invited to Fort Myers. Stop. Anyway,
we know this from It's a Wonderful Life when Sam Wainwright sends the hee-haw. He's like, my office instructed to wire you up to $20,000. Stop. You've been invited to Fort Myers. Stop. So,
as far as Jenkins is concerned, I kind of guess I go both directions with that because, because it would be fast, but he also made it to Double-A, and at the same time too, they've had some pretty young prospects get invited. Nick Gordon was invited pretty early. Now, with that said, situations are different with each guy, and so it's not necessarily fair to compare one or the other. But I mean, they were drafted in relatively similar spots, and so I don't know. I mean, again, he'll make the trip across from the backfields probably quite frequently, or maybe a few trips to Lakeland or wherever else, Bradenton. But I don't know how much we should or should not read into it, because does it mean they don't think he's quite close? Does it mean they don't think he's going to break through because their outfield is kind of something they got to figure out right now? Figure out what you have in Trevor Larnach and Matt Wallner. I'm not really sure. It's a little bit of mixed messaging, but I'm trying not to jump into jump to conclusions, Matt, where it's, this or that. I think maybe it just comes down to, they'll have him over enough to get a look, and it's not like this is make or break for a player of his caliber.
Because there has been talk from people in the know that there's a chance that if this season goes well, we'll see Matt Wallner in September.
Walker Jenkins.
Did I say Matt?
Yeah,
I was just looking at Matt.
We better see Matt Wallner in September. Yes,
we better, and that's like without a midseason break of some kind, and not that kind of break.
Unless he's an all-star.
We'll see what. Yeah, right. Could be. We'll see what we're supposed to maybe see Walker Jenkins at the end of the season, that he would progress to the majors. Do you remember Emmanuel Rodriguez last year? Was he an invitee or was he on the 40 at spring training last year? Do you remember?
I believe he was on the 40. Yeah, they had to add him before last year. So he was battling some injuries and stuff. And he was also the one that hit the ball where Guardians prospect George Valera got hurt, tore up his knee. And they had a roster decision with him this offseason. I don't remember what they did, if they added him or what. But he's had a lot of things go on around him. But he was a roster player last year. And I don't really know what to make of where he's at, because they could need help with outfielders. And obviously Emmanuel Rodriguez would be ahead of Walker Jenkins on the organizational hierarchy in terms of at least getting to the major leagues, maybe not staying or being a higher level player. But, those options burn up pretty fast if you're added to the 40 as a young player. They had to add Jorge Polanco when he was really, really young, and he ended up coming up and playing against the Rangers. I think he hit a triple in one of his first at bats. And I just remember though, like him being impossibly young and not playing much in the higher levels. It wouldn't shock me if something similar was true with Rodriguez, because, you can't sit on a 40-man spot forever. At some point, you just got to kind of see what you have. Not to say that he's done anything wrong or played poorly, just those clocks, those times get sped up on certain players based on when they sign and when they're Rule 5 eligible.
I think the Twins definitely have that in mind with Rodriguez. Yeah. I would hope so. And if you look at, we mentioned not only Walker Jenkins didn't get invited to spring training, no outfielders on the non-roster list got invited. But if you look at the team's outfield, they don't lack for bodies. Harrison Bader, they just signed. Byron Buxton, Deshaun Kersey, Trevor Larnach.
Jefferson
Austin
Morales
Martin.
can play a little bit of outfield. Like he played more left than anything else last year. He's kind of a catcher in name only at this point. I know he had caught in the past. So he's not an outfielder per se, but he could fit in a corner. He had 17 really nice games at St. Paul last year after beating up Wichita for almost 90 games. I mean, I don't know how much he is on the radar as much as it is. Again, I mentioned the Bailey Ober possibly getting an attaboy opening day start someday. I think Morales is getting an attaboy organizational type player bump where maybe he hits enough to force his way to the big leagues like Michael Hellman did, or maybe this is where he peaks. But as far as outfielders go, he's not one I'm really looking at to do much in the big leagues in the near future.
But the guys who are at least outfielder in name, 7 of them in spring training, they're all going to need to play. They're all going to have their playing time. There's not really a lot of room for more outfielders.
I mean, that's why they traded Hellman, I'm sure, too. That outfield and infield are both going to be tough to crack.
Right. And I don't know where second base anymore is a priority with Austin Martin. So we're going to see him a lot in the outfield. They're going to want to get a long, deep look at Kersey. And I think Rodriguez, they're going to want to look and see, not to necessarily rush him to the majors, but to know, okay, so if this guy starts out hot and looks healthy and looks pretty good, how soon could we trade Trevor Larnach? I'm not saying that they want to trade Trevor Larnach, but when would they be in position to trade some of their depth here to make the moves to get people like Rodriguez a space in the majors to play every day?
And based not only on track record as far as his skill set, but just to maybe carve out an extra plate appearance or 2 here or there. I wouldn't be shocked if Emmanuel Rodriguez hits leadoff a lot this spring. You get through the lineup in 2 innings and then have him bat in the 3rd and then replace him with Kiersey or whoever else in the outfield. You can probably get a little added look, maybe 10 extra plate appearances over the spring, assuming he's not sent out in the early cuts, which, again, maybe that does happen. But I think that it'll be interesting to see how they dispatch these guys. Not that you can look too much into it, but you could maybe get a feel for, Kiersey's an option, but do they really like him, or are they more along the lines of break glass in case of emergency or that sort of thing? I mean, I know that based on the Twins fan base, we won't be short on any snap judgments and that sort of thing, but I will be curious to kind of read it myself and for my own edification, kind of feel around for what I think the depth chart looks like in terms of guys behind. Because obviously, again, Rodriguez has to be a pretty high priority.
What chance do you think Lewis or Morris have of going deep into spring training and maybe competing for a final job? Probably in the bullpen, but maybe not necessarily. Is there a decent chance that one of those 2 guys can?
For me, it's 3 to 5%, and it would have to be contingent on what happens around them. Maybe Andrew Morris throws 12 innings and strikes out 16 batters and walks 1 and gets you really excited about it. But then I'm stashing him at AAA, still, in the role before. So maybe not even preparing these guys to relieve if that's where the most likely opening is going to be. So again, I don't really see it. We still have to figure out what they're going to do with Chris Paddock, Festa, Richardson, Ober, Ryan, Lopez. I mean, for as much as we've lamented that they haven't added a pitcher, they are still in really good shape, especially in the bullpen, but also in the rotation. I think the 9-18 finish in September really tarnished a lot of how people view this team, and it's not entirely fair. They had that entire month with limited Buxton, limited Correa, no Joe Ryan, and they just ran out of gas. And otherwise, though, they played at an 88 win pace, and everyone's just kind of writing them off.
So I think that we're covered for the non-roster invitees as far as the news and the probable news that we'll get out of that. We'll see, like we said before, who else might come. Someone like Ronnie Enriquez might be back here.
Yeah.
And we mentioned in the earlier show that they're looking at a shortstop, maybe someone like Paul DeYoung or Luis Urias.
And those would be big league guys too, but obviously,
the
roster expands.
Yes, that would be a 40, and then maybe whoever gets bumped off would be invited back if they would clear waivers, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, it's probably got to be a pitcher, I would guess.
yeah, I would imagine. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, at least briefly, I don't know if people have had a chance to see the YouTube short that Twins admin did on Bailey Ober asking the question. I love stupid questions more than anything. And the question asked is, how tall in double bubble gum pieces is Bailey Ober? And the double bubbles are the little ones. They're kind of thick pieces of gum. Maybe, I don't know, they're probably half an inch.
Are they standing up or are they laying down? They've got to be standing up, I suppose.
Yeah, they are. According to this screenshot I have, they are standing end on end. So they are horizontal.
Do you have a number? Do you have a number?
I do. Well, I've got guesses and numbers.
I've got a guess.
I've already seen the video, so I can't really give a guess.
And I deliberately didn't because I wanted to come into it cold. So I have a guess as well. What was your guess?
They are, they are end over end. So how many? I didn't have a guess because I immediately.
Oh, I'm going to say 96.
You know, it's funny. The guesses, and they asked a bunch of players what they thought.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, this video is hilarious because it is done in the style of AI narrator. So the AI narrator cannot pronounce LeBron James. It's LeBron. Not even that. It's not even that accurate. So it's a kind of an inside joke.
LeBron James or something.
LeBron. That's exactly right. That Bailey Ober has been compared. He's so tall that he's been compared to LeBron James and Godzilla. So we decided to see how many pieces of double bubble tall he is. So they asked Ober himself. He said, oh, maybe 100. Cole Sands was like, oh, maybe 79. He's like, I'm just totally pulling that out. Brock Stewart, 100. Pablo Lopez, 71. Brooks Lee. First he asked, what? And then he said, oh, 100. And then Austin Martin, an outlier, 2,500 pieces. Probably too many. Oh, is that a lot? Okay, maybe 85 then. So he amended it. Willie Castro. Oh, 350.
Wait, wasn't Austin Martin number 85 last year?
He was 82.
80 something.
He was 82.
Oh, he didn't stay true to his number then. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
No, he's changing numbers. That's a different episode entirely.
Yes.
And then Brooks Lee cheated after the fact and said, oh, I'll say 101.5. So and the number is, what did you say?
I said 96.
104.
No.
It's 104. And they made a yardstick, or whatever it will be called, with the pieces like stuck to them, maybe glued. And Ober is standing next to it, and he's looking right next to it. I don't know how into this bit he was, but Bailey Ober is 104 double bubble pieces tall. So they counted it and everything, and it's a very funny video, and I suggest you check it out.
Apparently, the world may never know was not the appropriate answer for Twins admin.
That is the Tootsie Roll Pop. That is a different gum entirely. So how many licks does it take to get to the center of Bailey Ober is not something that you can put on the internet.
Did you ever believe in the old wives' tale with that the man shooting the arrow meant that you'd get a free Tootsie Pop if you brought it back to wherever you bought it? There was always that folklore that the native that was shooting his arrow, that meant you got a free Tootsie Pop. But I don't think that was true.
I would have tried to claim that. That would have been fine. So that's what's up with the Twins with their non-roster invitees and on their social media. So they're off to a pretty good start here in 2025. And that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Twins. For Brandon Warren, this is Dave Brown, wishing that you all had been invited to spring training, and maybe you can go down there and watch some games instead. But until then, we are going to Alexei Casilla, also not invited, tomorrow night